After 5 years running our family business in Italy, I finally came back home to bring my motherless granddaughter to live with me. Every single month, I wired $10,000 for her support. But when I walked into her house and saw her on her knees scrubbing the floor with a rag, her arms thin and bruised, wearing a plastic tag that said "family made," while her stepmother's lover filed his nails nearby, my blood turned to fire. What I did after that moment changed everything. I'm really glad you're here. Stay with me until the end of this story and write in the comments which city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Marcy, and I'm 62 years old. After 5 years managing our family's business in Italy, I thought I was coming home to hug my granddaughter, Cora, and start over. Instead, I walked straight into a nightmare that still makes my hands shake when I remember it. The flight from Rome to Atlanta felt endless. I kept thinking about Cora, my sweet granddaughter, who was only 7 when I left. She would be 12 now, probably taller, maybe with the same bright smile her mother used to have. Her mother, Sarah, died in a car accident when Cora was just 5. My son Derek was shattered, and I became the only stable family Cora had left. When Derek remarried a woman named Regina 2 years ago, I felt relieved. At last, I thought, Cora would have a mother figure again, someone to brush her hair, help with homework, and give her the kind of everyday feminine care I couldn't offer from another continent. On our monthly calls, Derek always sounded content. He kept telling me how wonderful Regina was with Cora, how they were becoming a real family. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Every month without fail, I transferred $10,000 into Derek's account. Money meant specifically for Cora's needs: her education, clothes, activities, therapy if she needed it, and anything else that could make her life easier. Over 5 years, that added up to $600,000, and I never questioned it. He was her father. Why would I doubt him? When the taxi stopped in front of the house on Maple Street, I felt a wave of warmth and nostalgia. The 2-story colonial looked beautiful. Derek had inherited it from Sarah, and I'd sent extra money over the years for repairs and upgrades. The lawn was perfectly manicured, the hedges trimmed, the front porch freshly painted. Then I noticed the new BMW in the driveway, parked beside Derek's truck. Looks like Regina treated herself, I thought, trying to push away the strange twist in my stomach. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding with excitement. I couldn't wait to see how much Cora had grown, to hear about her school, her hobbies, her friends. For a child, 5 years is practically a whole lifetime. Regina opened the door, and I almost didn't recognize her. Her blonde hair was immaculately styled. Her nails were long, glossy, and clearly done at a salon. She wore a silk blouse that looked expensive even at a glance. She could have walked off the page of a fashion magazine. "Marcy," she exclaimed, leaning in for a quick, air kiss kind of hug. But the smile on her face didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're early," she added a second later. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "I caught an earlier flight," I explained, peering past her into the house. "Where's Cora? I can't wait to see her." For just a fraction of a second, something shifted in Regina's expression, like a shadow passing over her face. "Oh, she's around somewhere," she said lightly. Come in, come in." I followed her into the living room and stopped short. The space was unrecognizable. Sarah's warm, cozy furniture had disappeared. In its place was a coldly stylish setup. Sleek, modern sofas, glass tables, crystal vases, abstract artwork on the walls, and a massive flat-screen television dominating one side of the room. Everything radiated money and taste, but none of it felt like home. "Wow, Regina," I said carefully. "You've really made this place your own." "Thank you," she replied, lifting her chin slightly. "I believe in creating a sophisticated environment. It's important for a child's development." That's when I heard it. A steady, repetitive scrubbing sound coming from the kitchen. Regina's jaw tightened, so subtly most people would have missed it. "Let me get you some coffee," she said quickly, moving toward the kitchen doorway. "Why don't you sit down and—" But I was already heading toward the sound. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Cora was on her hands and knees on the kitchen floor, scrubbing the tiles with a filthy rag. My granddaughter, who should have been in school, or at least doing homework or playing, was cleaning like a house servant. Her clothes were too small, faded, and worn out. Her dark hair hung around her face in limp, tangled strands. Then I saw the plastic name tag pinned crookedly to her shirt. In bold black letters, it read, "Family Made." "Cora," I whispered. She looked up, and in that instant, I felt my heart shatter. This was not the bright, lively child I remembered. Her arms were too thin, unhealthily so, and there were dark marks around her wrists that looked like bruises. Her eyes, once full of light, now held something else, a dull, guarded fear. "Grandma Marcy," she breathed, her voice barely more than a whisper. I dropped to my knees beside her, wanting nothing more than to pull her into my arms, but Regina's sharp voice sliced through the air. "Cora, you're not finished with your chores, and you know better than to stop working when we have company." The casual cruelty in her tone made my stomach twist. I looked up and realized we weren't alone. A man I'd never seen before lounged at the breakfast bar in his 30s, filing his nails as if this was all a show for his entertainment. "This is Marcus," Regina said smoothly. "He's staying with us for a while." Marcus smirked. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Chen. Regina's told me all about you." His eyes slid over to Cora, still kneeling on the floor. "Love the setup here. Very efficient household management." I felt physically ill. "Cora, sweetheart, why aren't you in school?" I demanded. Regina answered before Cora could even open her mouth. "She's been having some behavioral issues. Homeschooling is more appropriate right now." "Behavioral issues," I repeated, staring at my granddaughter, who was scrubbing a floor that was already spotless. "What kind of behavioral issues?" "She's been very difficult lately," Regina replied calmly. "Ungrateful, defiant. Sometimes children need structure to learn respect." At the word defiant, I saw Cora flinch. This wasn't structure. This was control, abuse. "Cora, baby, come here and give your grandmother a hug," I said softly, holding out my arms. "She needs to finish her work first," Regina cut in, her voice suddenly rigid. "Cora understands that chores come before socializing. Don't you, Cora?" My granddaughter nodded without looking at me. The name tag on her chest caught the light, and I felt rage rise in me like a tidal wave. In that moment, I knew the money I had sent, the trust I had given, the family I thought existed, it had all been betrayed, and I was not going to let it continue. "Where's Derek?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully steady. "He's at work. He'll be home around 6. Regina glanced at the expensive watch on her wrist. "He's been working very hard lately. We've had some additional expenses." "I bet you have," I thought, looking around at the renovated house, her designer outfit, and that new BMW in the driveway. "Marcus, honey, why don't you show Marcy the improvements we've made to the house?" Regina suggested sweetly. "I'll make sure Cora gets back to her duties." As Marcus led me from room to room, my mind was spinning. Where had the $10,000 a month I'd been sending actually gone? Every space looked like it had been done by a high-end interior designer. New furniture, new fixtures, expensive lighting. In the master bedroom, I opened the walk-in closet and felt sick. It was packed with designer clothes, handbags, and shoes. Enough money hanging on those racks to feed a family for months. "Regina has excellent taste," Marcus said proudly. "She really knows how to make a house into a home." I nodded automatically, but all I could see in my mind was Cora on her knees in the kitchen, wearing a name tag that called her the family maid. When we finally went back to the living room, Cora was nowhere in sight. "Where is she?" I asked. "Cleaning the bathrooms upstairs," Regina replied casually, sinking into the expensive sofa like a queen on her throne. "She has a full schedule of responsibilities. It keeps her busy and out of trouble." "She's 12 years old," I said sharply. "Almost 13, actually," Regina corrected. "Old enough to contribute to the household. I believe in teaching children the value of hard work." I stared at this woman, living in luxury funded by my money, while my granddaughter was treated like unpaid help. The fury building in me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. "I'd like to see her room," I said. Something flickered in Regina's eyes. "Of course, though I should warn you, we've had to make some adjustments to her living situation because of her behavior." She led me down the hall to what used to be Sarah's craft room, a small space at the very end. Inside was a narrow twin bed, a small dresser, and nothing else. No posters, no toys, no books, no photos, no sign that a child actually lived there. "This is where Cora sleeps," Regina said smoothly. "She's more comfortable with less stimulation. Too many possessions can be overwhelming for a child with her particular needs. What needs? I asked, my voice low. Regina's smile turned cold. Cora has always been a challenging child. Sarah spoiled her terribly before she died. We're helping her develop better habits. I thought about the money I'd been sending. $600,000 over 5 years, meant to give Cora everything she needed. Instead, she was living like Cinderella in a glorified storage room, while Regina enjoyed the life of a wealthy socialite. I think I'll wait for Derek to get home, I said tightly. Of course, Regina replied. Though I should mention, Derek has been very supportive of our approach with Cora. He understands that sometimes tough love is necessary. I sat in that impeccably decorated living room, listening to the faint sounds of my 12-year-old granddaughter scrubbing bathrooms upstairs, and reality finally sank in. The child I'd been supporting from across the ocean wasn't living the comfortable, cared-for life I'd imagined. She was living like a prisoner in her own home. And the woman who was supposed to protect her was living like a queen, on my money. But Regina had made one fatal miscalculation. She had underestimated what a grandmother would do when she discovered her granddaughter was being treated like a slave. The war had just begun, and Regina had no idea who she was really up against. Derek finally came home around 6:30. The moment he walked through the door, I knew something was very wrong. My son, once strong, confident, always standing tall, looked like a hollow version of himself. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, and even his posture radiated defeat. When he hugged me, it felt empty. "Mom, you look great," he said, but his voice sounded smaller, worn down. "Thank you, honey. We need to talk." Regina appeared almost immediately, gliding to his side and wrapping her hand possessively around his arm. "Derek's had such a long day at work," she said smoothly. "Maybe you two can really catch up tomorrow." "No," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "We need to talk now." Derek glanced nervously between us. "Sure, Mom. What's on your mind?" I looked straight at Regina and then at Marcus, still lounging like he owned the place. "Privately," I said. "Oh, we don't keep secrets in this family," Regina replied with that fake, polished smile. "We're all adults here." "Regina, please," Derek murmured, weary. It sounded like an argument they'd had many times before. She huffed dramatically but retreated to the kitchen with Marcus. I knew perfectly well she was listening. I didn't care. Derek and I sat across from each other in that luxurious living room, surrounded by everything my money had bought, and I searched for the right place to start. "Derek, I need to understand what's happening with Cora." His face immediately shut down, his expression guarded. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, my voice trembling with contained anger, "why is my granddaughter wearing a name tag that says family maid and scrubbing floors while your wife walks around in designer clothes?" Derek's jaw clenched. "Mom, you don't understand the situation. Cora has been having problems." "What kind of problems?" I pressed. He ran a hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd had as a teenager. "She's been acting out, disrespectful. Regina's been trying to help her learn responsibility by making her, help around the house. It's not like that." But he still wouldn't look me in the eye. "Then what is it like?" I demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your 12-year-old daughter is doing all the housework while the adults enjoy the benefits." Derek's voice turned defensive. "Regina works very hard to keep this household running. Cora needs to learn that she's part of a family, not the center of the universe like Sarah used to treat her." The way he said Sarah's name, his dead wife, Cora's mother, made my skin crawl. "Sarah treated her like a beloved daughter," I snapped. "Because that's what she was." "Sarah spoiled her rotten," he insisted. "Cora never learned boundaries, never learned respect. Since Regina came into our lives, we've been trying to fix that." I stared at my son, wondering when he had turned into this stranger sitting in front of me. "Fix what exactly?" I asked quietly. "She's a child, Derek. She's supposed to be in school, playing with friends, not scrubbing your floors," I said, my voice tight. "She is in school," Derek replied. "Regina homeschools her." "And where exactly does this homeschooling take place?" I asked. Derek hesitated. "Regina has a structured program. I haven't seen a single textbook, workbook, notebook, nothing that suggests learning is happening in this house," I shot back. From the kitchen came Regina's sharp, artificial laugh. Derek's eyes flicked nervously in that direction. Derek, I've been sending you $10,000 every month for 5 years, I said slowly. Where has that money gone? It goes toward Cora's care, just like we agreed, he said. Her care? I gestured around the lavish living room. This furniture alone costs more than most people make in a year. The car outside, Regina's clothes, this entire renovation. That's where my money went, isn't it? Mom, maintaining a home is expensive, he muttered. Don't lie to me. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't pull it back. I've sent you $600,000 to take care of Cora, and I find her living like a servant while everyone else lives like royalty. Derek shot to his feet and started pacing toward the window. You don't understand how hard this has been, he said. Raising someone else's daughter, dealing with her behavioral issues, trying to blend a family. Regina gave up her career to be a mother to Cora. Someone else's daughter? The words came out like ice. Derek, Cora is your daughter. Sarah was your wife. Sarah's gone, he snapped, the words bursting out of him raw and jagged. She's been gone for 7 years, Mom. Regina is here now. Regina is my wife, and she's trying to help Cora become a productive member of this family instead of a spoiled brat who thinks the world owes her something. I felt like I'd been slapped. A spoiled brat? I repeated. Derek, she was 7 when I left. What could she possibly have done to deserve being treated like this? Before he could answer, Regina appeared in the doorway, Marcus right behind her. I couldn't help but overhear, she said, without even pretending to be apologetic. Marcy, I think there's been a misunderstanding about Cora's situation. Really? I said. Then by all means, enlighten me. Regina glided to the chair across from me and sat down with rehearsed grace, every movement controlled. Cora has some serious behavioral problems that developed after Sarah died, she began smoothly. She became destructive, disrespectful, violent even. She would throw screaming fits, break things, hit other children at school. I turned to Derek. Is this true? He nodded reluctantly. She was acting out pretty badly. The school called us multiple times. She was grieving, I said. She lost her mother. Of course she was acting out. For 7 years? Regina countered softly. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes were cold. Marcy, I know this is difficult to hear, but Cora has never properly adjusted to her mother's death. She became manipulative, using her grief to avoid responsibility. She would lie constantly, steal, even hurt herself to get attention. My heart was pounding. None of this matched the sweet little girl I remembered. I don't believe you, I said. Regina pulled out her phone and began scrolling. Here, look at these pictures. She held the screen out toward me. Photos of broken plates, ripped books, marker scribbles all over the walls. This is just from last month, she said. Then she swiped to another set of photos. And these... I saw images of her arms with what looked like finger marks and scratches. She did this, Regina said quietly. She has serious anger issues. We've had to be very firm with her boundaries. The chores aren't punishment. They're therapy. Structure helps her feel secure and teaches her that actions have consequences. I felt like the floor was tilting under my feet. Could I have been wrong? Was the child I saw scrubbing the floor actually a deeply troubled teenager who needed this kind of strict discipline? The name tag, I managed. The one that says, family made. That was her idea, Regina replied without missing a beat. She said she wanted to contribute to the family, so we gave her responsibilities that matched her abilities. She actually takes pride in keeping the house clean. Derek nodded. Mom, I know it looks harsh from the outside, but Regina has really helped Cora improve. She's much calmer now, more respectful. What about school? I asked. Her education? I'm certified in early childhood education, Regina said smoothly. Cora learns much better in a controlled environment than she did in public school, where she was constantly getting into fights and disrupting other students. I sat there, trying to absorb everything they were telling me. It clashed with everything my instincts were screaming, with everything I believed about my granddaughter. But Regina sounded so calm, so reasonable, and Derek supported every word. I'd like to talk to Cora, I said at last. Of course, Regina said. But I should warn you, she's learned to manipulate adults by playing the victim. She might tell you things just to make you feel sorry for her. Regina turned toward the stairs. Cora, come down here, please. My granddaughter appeared at the top of the staircase, moving slowly, carefully, like someone trying not to make a sound. She'd changed clothes, but she still looked thin and exhausted. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Ma'am?" She called Regina ma'am. "Your grandmother wants to talk with you," Regina said. Cora came down and sat on the edge of the sofa, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. Her whole body radiated caution. "Cora, sweetheart, how are you doing?" I asked gently. She shot a quick look at Regina before answering. "I'm fine, Grandma Marcy." "Are you happy here?" I asked. Another quick glance at Regina. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell your grandmother about your chores," Regina prompted. "I help keep the house clean," Cora said in a flat, practiced tone. "Regina says it's important to contribute to the family." "And do you like homeschooling?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm learning a lot." Every answer sounded memorized, delivered exactly the way Regina wanted, polite, empty, emotionless. This was not the lively, curious child I remembered. But then again, she had been through so much. Maybe grief and time really had changed her into someone I barely recognized. "Cora, why don't you show your grandmother your room?" Regina suggested. We walked upstairs to the bare little room I'd seen earlier. Cora stopped in the doorway while I stepped inside and looked around the sparse space. "This is nice," I lied, hoping to get more than a one-word answer out of her. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Regina says too much stuff makes it hard to focus." "What do you do for fun?" I asked her softly. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, something like longing or hope. Then it disappeared. "I read sometimes," she said. "Regina picks out appropriate books for me." I glanced around the bare little room. There wasn't a single book in sight. As we headed back downstairs, I heard Regina and Derek speaking in low, urgent tones. Their voices cut off the moment we appeared. "Well," Regina said brightly, her smile snapping back into place. "I hope that helped clear things up." I looked at Cora, who immediately slipped back into that tense, guarded posture, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes lowered. Everything Regina had told me sounded reasonable on the surface. The photos on her phone, Derek's confirmation, even Cora's own carefully measured answers all seemed to support this story of a troubled child who needed strict discipline and structure. But every instinct I had as a mother and grandmother screamed that something was very, very wrong. After Cora was sent back upstairs, Regina walked me to the door. "I know this is a lot to process," she said in a warm, sympathetic tone, "but I want you to know that everything we do is for Cora's benefit. Derek and I both love her very much." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. On the drive to my hotel, I kept replaying everything I'd seen and heard: the name tag, Cora's thin arms, the way she flinched at Regina's sharp tone. But then I thought about the photos Regina had shown me, Derek's obvious stress, the carefully constructed story that made Regina look like a long-suffering saint. By the time I unlocked my hotel room door, I'd made up my mind. I needed the truth, and I wasn't going to get it by asking questions Regina had already rehearsed answers for. I was going to have to find it myself. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Cora's pale face, the hollowness in her eyes, the way she held herself, as if she were trying to shrink into nothing. Something was wrong. I was sure of it, and I was going to prove it. The next morning, I drove to the local library and spent 3 hours digging into Regina Walsh, before she ever became Regina Chen. What I uncovered made my blood run cold. Regina had been married twice before Derek. Her first husband, Robert Walsh, had died in a car accident, leaving behind a 9-year-old daughter named Emma. 6 months after his death, Regina married again, a widower named Thomas Brennan, who had a 10-year-old son, Jake. I found a newspaper article from 2 years later. Emma Walsh had gone missing from her home. She was found 3 days later at a truck stop 50 miles away, malnourished and traumatized. When authorities questioned her, Emma said her stepmother had been making her sleep in the garage and work as a house servant for paying guests. The case was quietly settled out of court. Regina and Thomas divorced soon after, and she walked away with a substantial settlement. There was no mention of what happened to Emma or Jake after that. My hands shook as I printed every article I could find. This wasn't a one-time situation. Regina had a pattern, and Cora was just her latest target. I spent the rest of the day putting a plan together. I couldn't just storm into the house and confront her. She'd already shown me how skilled she was at twisting reality, how easily she could spin a story that sounded perfectly logical to anyone who didn't know better. I needed evidence, real, undeniable proof. First, I called an old friend from my business days, Patricia, who now worked for a private investigation firm. "Marcy, good to hear from you," she said warmly. "How's retirement treating you?" "I need a favor, Pat, a big one." I laid out everything I'd seen and learned. By the time I finished, Patricia's voice had lost all its casual warmth. "Jesus, Marcy, this sounds like a classic exploitation case. What do you need?" "Surveillance equipment," I said. "Something small, something they won't notice. I need to document what's really going on in that house." "I can have someone meet you this afternoon," she replied. "But Marcy, be careful. If this woman is as dangerous as she sounds, you could be putting yourself and your granddaughter in serious danger." 2 hours later, I met one of Patricia's colleagues, a woman named Lisa, at a coffee shop downtown. She showed me tiny recording devices, miniature cameras hidden inside objects that looked completely ordinary, and walked me through how to use each one. "The key is to act normal," Lisa said. "Don't suddenly change your habits or behavior. Record everything you can, but don't confront them until you have enough to go to the authorities." That evening, I went back to Derek's house with a small overnight bag and a polite excuse about wanting more time to reconnect with the family. "Of course you can stay," Regina said, smiling tightly. But I caught the flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "We have a lovely guest room." The guest room was directly above the kitchen, perfect for my purposes. Over the next 3 days, I documented everything. Through the tiny camera I'd hidden in the living room, I watched as Regina made Cora scrub the floors again and again, even when they were already shining. If Cora missed a single spot, Regina ordered her to start over from the beginning. I recorded audio of Regina calling Cora worthless, just like your dead mother, when the girl accidentally dropped a dish. I captured her forcing Cora to stand in a corner for 2 straight hours because she dared to ask for a glass of water while she was on duty. But the worst thing I discovered came on the 3rd night. I had hidden a small audio recorder in the kitchen, disguised inside a decorative magnet on the refrigerator. Around midnight, it picked up voices, so I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Regina was on the phone, her voice low but clear in the quiet house. "No, she's too young for that kind of work," she was saying. "But she's perfect for daytime cleaning jobs, very obedient, won't cause any trouble, $50 an hour, minimum 4-hour bookings." My heart stopped. She was talking about Cora. "The Chen family has excellent references," Regina continued smoothly. "The child is well trained and discreet. Your friends won't have any complaints." My hand tightened around the railing until my knuckles turned white. Regina wasn't just using Cora as a servant in her own home. She was renting my granddaughter out to other people. The call went on for another 10 minutes, Regina calmly discussing schedules and rates like she was running a professional cleaning service. Except the employee was my 12-year-old granddaughter, working for free. I captured every word on that recorder. The next morning at breakfast, I watched Regina with new eyes. Every order, every cutting remark, every nitpick wasn't random. It was calculated. A slow, methodical effort to crush a child's spirit until she was completely obedient. "Cora, you left water spots on the glasses," Regina said, holding a perfectly clean glass up to the light. "Do them all again." Cora just nodded and quietly started rewashing every single glass in the cabinet. No protest, no complaints, just submission. "Regina," I said carefully, forcing my tone to stay light. "Maybe I could help Cora with the dishes, spend a little grandmother-granddaughter time together." "Oh, that's kind of you," Regina replied with a practiced smile. "But Cora needs to learn responsibility. If we help her with her chores, she'll never develop a proper work ethic." Derek nodded along. "Regina's right, Mom. Cora's made huge progress since she started the Structure program." Structure program. They'd even branded their abuse to make it sound respectable. That afternoon, while Regina was at her nail appointment and Derek was at work, I finally had a chance to talk to Cora alone. I found her in the laundry room, expertly folding clothes like a seasoned housekeeper. "Cora, sweetheart, can we talk?" I asked gently. She glanced at the door, nervous. "I'm supposed to finish the laundry before Regina gets back." "I'll help," I said. "We can talk while we work." For a few minutes, we folded in silence. Then I spoke quietly. "Cora, I want you to know you can tell me anything. I'm your grandmother, and I love you no matter what. Her hand froze on a towel. Regina says you might try to put nonsense in my head, she said softly. That some adults lie to children to make them misbehave. And what do you think? I asked. Do you think I would lie to you? She looked up at me with eyes that seemed far too old for her age. I don't know anymore, she whispered. Regina says a lot of things about what people really think of me. What kind of things? Another quick look at the door. She says everyone knows I'm the kind of kid who causes trouble, Cora murmured. That's why I can't go to regular school. The teachers complained about me too much. Cora, do you remember your mother? I asked gently. Do you remember how she treated you? For a second, her face shifted. A real expression, raw and unguarded, broke through the careful mask. Regina says I remember wrong, she said. That Mommy was sick, and that's why she let me get away with being bad all the time. And what do you remember? I pressed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I remember Mommy reading to me, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, singing while she brushed my hair. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. Regina says crying is manipulation, she added, that I use tears to get out of my responsibilities. I knelt in front of her, my chest aching. Cora, crying is normal, I said firmly. It's okay to miss your mother. It's okay to be sad. No, it's not, she burst out suddenly. I have to be grateful. Regina gave up everything to be my mother when nobody else wanted me. She says I should be thankful she didn't send me to live with strangers. Honey, I would have taken you in a heartbeat, I said. I wanted you to come live with me, but your father said you were better off with him and Regina. Cora stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. You wanted me? She asked. Of course I wanted you, I said. You're my granddaughter. I love you. For a moment, her whole facade crumbled. I could see the terrified, grieving child underneath all the conditioning. Then a car door slammed outside, and she stiffened like a soldier at attention. Regina's back, she whispered. I have to finish the laundry. Cora, listen to me, I said quickly. This isn't normal. Children aren't supposed to work like servants. They're supposed to go to school, play, have friends. You don't understand, she said desperately. I'm not like other kids. I'm broken. Regina's trying to fix me, but it's really hard because I'm so damaged. You are not broken, I said, my voice firm. You are not damaged. You are a beautiful, intelligent, wonderful child who deserves love and protection. The front door opened, and we heard Regina call out, I'm home. Cora, where are you? Cora went pale. If she finds out we talked like this, she'll be so mad, she whispered. Please don't tell her what I said. We hurried to finish the folding while my mind raced. Regina had twisted this child so completely that Cora believed she deserved to be treated like this. That servitude was love. That abuse was fixing her. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to the creaks and sighs of the house. I had recordings now, proof of verbal and emotional abuse, and evidence that Regina was trying to profit off Cora's labor. But I also knew that if I confronted her too soon, she might disappear with Cora, or poison Derek against me so completely I'd never get near my granddaughter again. I needed more, and I needed to be strategic. The next morning, I sat in my rental car and called Patricia again. I need you to dig deeper into Regina's background, I said. Specifically, I need to find Emma Walsh and Jake Brennan, the kids from her previous marriages. Already on it, Patricia replied. Emma Walsh is 24 now and living in Oregon. She's been in therapy for years. Jake Brennan was placed in foster care after his father's suspicious death. My stomach tightened. Suspicious how? Thomas Brennan died from a fall down the stairs 6 months after Emma went missing, Patricia said. Jake told investigators Regina had been giving his father sleeping pills, said he had insomnia. The insurance company settled instead of pushing for a deeper investigation. I felt sick. This woman is a predator, Patricia added grimly. And it gets worse. I found records of Regina contacting several other widowers with young kids in the last 2 years. She targets grieving fathers with money and vulnerable children. I have to get Cora out of there, I said, my voice shaking. Marcy, you need to be careful, Patricia warned. If this woman has killed before, staying in that house could be dangerous for you, and for Cora. But walking away wasn't an option. Not now. Not when I finally understood just how deep this went, and exactly what kind of monster was living in my son's house. Regina wasn't just stealing my money and using Cora as free labor. She was dismantling a child's sense of self-worth on purpose, convincing her she was broken and unlovable so she'd be easier to control. And from the phone calls I'd recorded, it was clear she wasn't only exploiting Cora inside that house. She was profiting from her, sending my granddaughter out to clean for strangers like some kind of rentable maid. My granddaughter wasn't just being abused, she was being trafficked. The realization hit me so hard I had to pull the car over and sit there, gripping the steering wheel while I tried to breathe. This was so much worse than anything I had imagined. But now I knew the truth, and I was going to make Regina answer for every single thing she'd done to that child. With Patricia's research in hand, I knew I needed hard proof of Regina's little business. The audio recordings were powerful, but I needed evidence of money changing hands and confirmation that Cora was actually being sent into other people's homes to work. So I extended my visit. I told Derek and Regina I was thinking about moving back to Atlanta for good and wanted some time to look for a house. Regina's smile was tight and strained when I said it, but she couldn't object without looking suspicious. "How wonderful," she said through clenched teeth. "Family is so important." Over the next week, I built a routine. Every morning, I'd leave the house with my purse and a stack of fake real estate brochures, pretending I was meeting agents or running errands. Instead, I parked a little way down the street where I had a clear view of their front door, and I watched. What I saw made me physically sick. On Tuesday morning, Regina hustled Cora into her car at 7:30 a.m. I followed at a distance as she drove to an upscale neighborhood on the other side of town, stopping in front of a huge colonial house. I watched as Regina walked Cora up to the door. A well-dressed woman opened it, handed Regina an envelope, and then pulled Cora inside. Regina turned around and drove away, leaving my 12-year-old granddaughter in a stranger's house. I stayed there in my car for 4 hours, staring at that front door until Regina finally came back at noon. When the door opened, Cora stepped out looking exhausted, clothes rumpled, hair messy, moving like she could barely stand upright. The woman at the door handed Regina another envelope before Cora climbed into the car. I followed them home, my hands shaking on the wheel. As soon as they got back, Regina sent Cora upstairs to shower. Through the hidden camera I'd placed in the living room, I watched Regina sit down and calmly sort through the envelopes, counting the cash into neat, tidy stacks. That evening at dinner, I forced myself to sound casual. "How was everyone's day?" I asked. "Productive," Regina said smoothly. "Cora had some educational activities this morning." Derek nodded eagerly. "Regina's always finding new learning opportunities for Cora. She's very creative with the homeschooling curriculum." Cora sat silently, pushing food around her plate. I noticed she'd been given a noticeably smaller portion than the rest of us. And while we had pasta and meat, her plate held only vegetables and a small piece of bread. "Cora's on a special diet," Regina explained when she caught me looking. "She has digestive issues that need careful management." Another lie. Another way to justify withholding basic care. The next day I followed them again. This time, they went to a different house. Same pattern. Knock on the door, envelope handed over. Cora left inside. Regina drives away. Hours later, Regina returns, collects her, accepts another payment. By Friday, I had documented Cora being dropped off at 5 different homes. Same structure every time. Regina wasn't just a cruel stepmother. She was running a business, and my granddaughter was the product. That weekend, I told Derek and Regina I was going to visit my old friend Martha, who lived about an hour away. Instead, I drove all the way to Oregon. I'd learned Emma Walsh was living in Portland. I found her working at a small veterinary clinic, quiet, withdrawn, with prematurely gray hair and nervous eyes that reminded me painfully of Cora's. "You're Regina's mother-in-law?" she asked when I introduced myself. Her face went pale. "Is she still married to your son?" "Yes," I said gently. "Emma, I need to know what she did to you." Emma looked around the empty waiting room, then locked the front door and led me to a small office in the back. "I should have said something years ago," she whispered, "but who was going to believe me?" She was so good at making me look like a messed up kid who made things up for attention. "I believe you," I told her. "Tell me everything." The story Emma shared was horrifying and heartbreakingly familiar. After her father died, Regina had slowly cut Emma off from her friends and extended family, telling everyone the girl was too emotionally unstable to be around other kids. She pulled Emma out of school over supposed behavior problems that Emma insisted were fabricated. She made me work for her friends, Emma said, tears spilling down her cheeks, cleaning their houses, serving at their parties, babysitting their kids. She told people I was learning life skills, that it was therapy for my grief. Did she get paid for it? I asked. Emma nodded. Thousands of dollars. She charged by the hour and kept everything. She said since I was so expensive to raise, I had to help cover the costs. And your stepfather, Thomas? I asked. Emma's expression darkened. At first he tried to stop her, she said. But Regina, she's very good at manipulating people. She convinced him I was dangerous, that I needed strict control so I wouldn't hurt myself or anyone else. She'd show him fake injuries and say I'd attacked her. Fake injuries? I repeated. She'd hurt herself and blame me, Emma said softly. Or she'd drug my food so I'd act confused or sluggish, and then tell him I was having psychotic episodes. I felt bile rise in my throat. What happened the night you ran away? I asked. I heard her on the phone, Emma said, her voice shaking. She was talking to someone about selling me, not just sending me to clean for a few hours, but selling me to be a live-in servant. She was negotiating a price. Emma wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. I knew if I didn't leave that night, I'd never get another chance. I walked for 3 days before someone found me and called the police. And your stepfather's death? I asked quietly. I don't have proof, Emma said, staring at the floor, but I know she killed him. He'd started to question her version of why I ran away, Emma said quietly. He was beginning to doubt all her stories about my behavior problems. A week later, he was dead. Emma gripped my hands, her eyes intense. If this woman has your granddaughter, you have to get her out, she said. Regina doesn't just exploit kids for money. She destroys them from the inside. She makes you believe you're worthless, that you deserve what's happening, that no one else will ever love you. The drive back to Atlanta was the longest 4 hours of my life. All I could see in my mind was Cora's thin face, the way she flinched when adults spoke to her, how she believed she was broken and should be grateful for Regina's abuse. When I walked into Derek's house that evening, the family was in the living room watching TV. Cora was sitting on the floor, polishing Regina's shoes while the adults lounged comfortably on the couch. How was your visit with Martha? Derek asked. Enlightening, I said, my eyes fixed on Regina. Very enlightening. Something in my tone made her look at me sharply, but I kept my expression calm. That night, I called Patricia and told her everything. Emma's testimony combined with your recordings should be enough for the authorities, she said. But, Marcy, you need to be extremely careful. If Regina suspects you know the truth, she could disappear with Cora before anyone can stop her. What's the legal process? I asked. How do I get Cora away from them? Child Protective Services will have to investigate first, Patricia replied. With your evidence, they should be able to get an emergency removal order, but it still takes time, and if Regina sees it coming, she'll fight it. I need to move fast, I said. There's something else you should know, Patricia added. I tracked down Jake Brennan. He's in a group home for traumatized kids in Arizona. Foster families kept rejecting him because of his behavioral issues. What kind of issues? I asked, though I already feared the answer. Severe PTSD, attachment disorders. He can't trust adults. His caseworker says he still has nightmares about his time with Regina. He only lived with her for 18 months, but the psychological damage was massive. I closed my eyes, thinking about the fact that Regina had been working on Cora for over 2 years. Patricia, I'm getting Cora out of there this week, I said. One way or another, just be smart about it, she warned. This woman is dangerous. She's already shown she'll kill to protect herself. After I hung up, I sat alone in my hotel room and laid out my options. I couldn't just wait for the system to crawl forward at its usual pace. Every extra day in that house meant more damage to Cora, more money in Regina's pocket. But I also couldn't simply grab Cora and run. That would make me the kidnapper in the eyes of the law, and Regina would twist it into a story about an unstable grandmother trying to steal a child. I needed Regina to expose herself. I needed her to make a mistake that even Derek couldn't rationalize away. The next morning, I came back to the house with a new strategy. I was done pretending I believed their lies. I've been thinking, I announced casually at breakfast. Since I'm planning to move back to Atlanta, I'd like to set up a college fund for Cora, a substantial one. Regina's eyes lit up with greedy interest. How substantial? I was thinking around $200,000 to start. Derek nearly choked on his coffee. Mom, that's incredibly generous, but she'd need to be enrolled in an accredited school to be eligible, I continued smoothly. The fund requires academic transcripts and standardized test scores. Regina's smile faltered. Well, homeschooling doesn't really work like that. Oh, but it can, I said lightly. I've done some research. There are state requirements for homeschooled children, regular testing, documentation, annual evaluations. I'd be happy to help Cora get caught up on anything she's missed. I watched her face shift as she silently weighed her options. $200,000 was a very tempting carrot, but to reach it, she'd have to prove that Cora was actually being educated. That's very thoughtful, Regina said at last. But Cora has special learning needs that make traditional testing inappropriate. What kind of needs? I asked. She has attention and memory issues related to her trauma, Regina said smoothly. Standard evaluations would be overwhelming for her. Another lie. Another excuse to keep Cora isolated, unmonitored, and under her control. But the seed had been planted. I knew Regina would spend the day trying to figure out how to get her hands on that money without exposing the truth. And greedy people always overreach when there's a prize just out of reach. That evening, I set the final stage of my plan. It was time to force Regina to reveal who she really was. With witnesses she couldn't charm, manipulate, or scare into silence. The war was almost over, and Regina didn't realize she'd already lost. My plan was simple, but the timing had to be exact. I called Patricia and asked her to arrange for a social worker to be on standby. Then I contacted Detective Sarah Morrison from the Atlanta Police Department's Crimes Against Children unit. I'd chosen her carefully. She was known for taking child exploitation cases seriously and moving fast when families brought real evidence. Mrs. Chen, the recordings you've described are very concerning, Detective Morrison said over the phone. If you can get this woman to admit, on tape, that she's been trafficking your granddaughter, we can act immediately. I need to make sure Cora will be safe, I said. If Regina senses she's about to be exposed, she could hurt her. We'll have units positioned nearby, the detective assured me. The moment you signal us, we'll move in. But Mrs. Chen, what you're planning is dangerous. This woman may have killed before. I'm 62 years old, detective. I've survived cancer, divorce, bankruptcy, and building a business from nothing, I told her. I'm not about to be intimidated by some psychopath who's been torturing my granddaughter. That evening, I put my plan into motion. I went back to Derek's house carrying a briefcase and wearing my most expensive business suit, the same one I used to close major deals in Italy. I wanted Regina to see exactly who she was up against. Derek, Regina, I need to speak with both of you about something important, I announced. It's about Cora's future and the college fund I mentioned. We all sat in the living room while Cora was upstairs, supposedly doing homework. I set my briefcase on the coffee table, opened it, and pulled out a stack of official-looking documents I had prepared in advance. I've spoken with my financial advisor, I began, and we can actually do much better than $200,000. I'm prepared to establish a trust fund of $500,000 for Cora's education and future. Regina's eyes went wide. Derek stared at me in disbelief. Mom, that's incredible, he said. But you don't have to. I want to, I said firmly. But there are conditions, legal conditions that protect both Cora and the money. I spread the papers across the coffee table. The trust requires that Cora be enrolled in an accredited educational program within 30 days, I explained. It also requires annual wellness checks by a court-appointed guardian to ensure the funds are being used appropriately. Regina leaned forward, scanning the documents. I could almost see the numbers spinning in her head as she tried to find a way around the requirements. What exactly does wellness checks mean? She asked carefully. A social worker would visit once a year, I said. They would assess Cora's living situation, her educational progress, and her general well-being. It's standard for large educational trusts involving minors. That sounds rather invasive, Regina replied. It's designed to protect children from having their trust funds misused by guardians, I said calmly, watching her face. Surely that's not a problem here. Derek was still reading. Mom, this is Amazing. But $500,000? How can you afford this? The business in Italy was very profitable, I said. I've decided I'd rather spend my money on family while I'm still here to see it make a difference. Regina went quiet, her expression tightening as she weighed her options. $500,000 was a powerful temptation, but the oversight would expose everything she'd been doing. There is one other option, I added lightly, as if the thought had just come to me. If the educational and oversight requirements are too complicated, I could simply give you the money directly. Cash payment for excellent care of my granddaughter over the years. Regina's head snapped up. Cash payment? Well, you've been providing round-the-clock care for Cora, I said smoothly. You essentially sacrificed your career to be a full-time mother. That has significant monetary value. I could see the greed flare to life in her eyes. Here was the path to the money, with no social workers, no testing, no oversight. How much were you thinking? Derek asked, though he already seemed uneasy. I was thinking we could calculate it based on fair market rates, I said. Professional child care averages about $30 an hour. If we assume 10 hours of active supervision per day for the past 2 years, that adds up to over $200,000 in child care services. Regina was practically glowing. That's very thoughtful of you, to recognize the sacrifice, she said. Of course, I'd want to make sure I understand exactly what services have been provided. For tax purposes, you understand. The IRS requires detailed documentation for large payments like this. I reached into my briefcase and took out a small audio recorder, placing it openly on the coffee table. Would you mind if I record this conversation? I asked pleasantly. My accountant will need a clear record of what the payment is for. Regina hesitated for a heartbeat, but the promise of $200,000 in cash won. Of course, she said. Wonderful. I pressed the button. So, Regina, could you describe the care you've been providing for Cora over the past 2 years? Regina launched into what she believed was a flattering portrait of her parenting, but every sentence was another nail in her own coffin. I've provided structure and discipline that Cora desperately needed, she began. I've taught her valuable life skills through household responsibilities. I've arranged educational opportunities with other families in our social circle. Educational opportunities? I prompted. Yes, Cora has learned so much by observing how other households function, Regina said. I've arranged for her to spend time helping other families with their domestic needs. It's been incredibly valuable for her social development. And these other families compensate you for Cora's time? I asked, still calm. Well, naturally, Regina said. They contribute to her upkeep. It costs money to feed and clothe a growing child, and they understand that. Derek's eyebrows drew together. Regina, what families? I thought you were homeschooling Cora here. Regina shot him an irritated look. Derek, there are many aspects of Cora's education that you leave to my judgment. You're always so busy with work. How much do these families typically contribute? I asked, as if this were nothing more than a financial detail. It varies, she said, anywhere from $50 to $100 per session, depending on the scope of Cora's responsibilities. Sessions, I repeated. Yes, she said smoothly. Usually 4 to 6 hour periods where Cora assists with cleaning, organization, childcare support. It's wonderful practical experience for her. Now Derek was visibly unsettled. Regina, he said slowly, are you saying other families pay you for Cora to work in their houses? It's not work, it's education, Regina snapped. Cora is learning valuable life skills that will serve her as an adult. I didn't let it go. And how often do these educational sessions happen? 3 to 4 times a week, she said briskly. Sometimes more if there's high demand. High demand for Cora specifically? I asked. Regina's smile turned almost predatory. Cora has an excellent reputation in our social circle. She's very obedient and thorough in her tasks. Derek shot to his feet. Regina, you're talking about sending my daughter to work as a maid for your friends. Don't be ridiculous, Derek, she snapped back. Everything I do is for Cora's benefit. She's learning responsibility and contributing to household expenses. That's much better than letting her sit around feeling sorry for herself. Contributing to household expenses? Derek's voice was rising. She's 12 years old. Regina's polished composure started to crack. Derek, you have no idea how hard it's been raising your daughter, she said sharply. When I came into this family, she needed extensive behavior modification. The structure I've provided has transformed her from a spoiled, destructive child into a productive member of society. Productive? Derek stared at her like she was a stranger. You mean profitable? Don't you take that tone with me, Regina snarled. I've sacrificed my entire life to fix your broken daughter. The least she can do is contribute to her own upkeep, instead of being a constant drain on our resources. The mask was gone. The sweet, selfless stepmother act had evaporated, and the real woman underneath, cold, greedy, and vicious, was fully exposed. I kept the recorder running as she ranted on, every sentence another piece of evidence. Cora should be grateful for the opportunities I've given her, Regina went on. Do you know how many children would love to have the structure and purpose I've created? She was headed for juvenile detention, or worse, before I stepped in. By making her scrub floors and work as unpaid labor for your friends? I asked quietly. By teaching her that the world doesn't owe her anything just because her mother died, Regina shot back. By showing her that respect and comfort are earned through hard work and obedience. Derek looked sick. Regina? My God, what have you done? I've saved this family from financial ruin, she shouted. Do you really think your salary alone could maintain this lifestyle? Do you think money just appears out of nowhere? Cora's contributions have paid for every improvement to this house, every luxury we enjoy. Contributions, I repeated. You mean the money other people pay you for access to my granddaughter? She's not your granddaughter anymore, Regina spat, spinning on me with pure hatred in her eyes. You abandoned this family for 5 years. You don't get to walk back in and judge how we survived without you. I sent $10,000 every month for her care, I said evenly. And every penny went to her care, Regina snapped. Food, shelter, clothing, medical expenses, education. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child properly? Then why does she sleep in a closet-sized room with no personal belongings? I asked, while you live in luxury. Because she hasn't earned anything better, Regina said coldly. Everything in this house belongs to me and Derek. Cora gets exactly what she deserves based on her behavior and contribution. The recorder captured every damning word, her beliefs about children, money, and the convenient way she'd twisted care into exploitation. Finally, I asked the question I knew would seal her fate. Regina, over the last 2 years, approximately how much money have you received from other families for Cora's so-called educational services? She was so furious now that she answered without pausing to think. Between $15,000 and $20,000, she snapped, money that was desperately needed to maintain this household and provide for Cora's needs. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft whir of the recorder. Derek collapsed back into his chair, his face ghost white. $20,000, he whispered. You've been selling my daughter's labor and keeping the money. I've been managing this family's finances in ways you're obviously too naive to understand, Regina shot back. Someone had to make hard decisions while you buried your head in the sand. That was my moment. Derek, I said quietly, there's something else you need to know about your wife. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the printed newspaper articles Patricia had found. The ones about Regina's previous marriages, Emma Walsh's disappearance, and Thomas Brennan's suspicious death. Regina has done this before, I said, to other children, in other families. She's a predator who targets widowed fathers and vulnerable kids. Derek took the pages with shaking hands and began to read. With every line, the horror on his face deepened. Across from us, Regina stood frozen, realizing her past had finally caught up with her. You're lying, she whispered, but there was no strength in it. Emma Walsh is 24 now and living in Oregon, I said calmly. She's been in therapy for years, trying to recover from what you did to her. Jake Brennan is in a group home in Arizona because the psychological damage you caused was so severe no family would take him. Derek looked up from the articles, his expression twisted with disgust and betrayal. I'm 62 years old, detective. I've survived cancer, divorce, bankruptcy, and building a business from nothing, I told her. I'm not about to be intimidated by some psychopath who's been torturing my granddaughter. That evening, I set the final part of my plan in motion. I went back to Derek's house carrying a briefcase and wearing my best business suit, the same one I used to close multi-million-dollar deals in Italy. I wanted Regina to see exactly who she was dealing with. Derek, Regina, I need to talk to both of you about something important, I announced. It's about Cora's future and the college fund I mentioned. We sat together in the living room while Cora was upstairs, supposedly doing homework. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the official-looking documents I'd prepared. I spoke with my financial advisor, I began. We can actually do much better than $200,000. I'm prepared to create a trust fund of $500,000 for Cora's education and future. Regina's eyes went wide. Derek looked stunned. Mom, that's incredible, he said. But you don't have to. I want to, I said firmly. But there are conditions, legal protections for both Cora and the money. I laid the documents out on the table. The trust requires that Cora be enrolled in an accredited educational program within 30 days, I explained. It also requires yearly wellness checks by a court-appointed guardian to confirm the funds are being used properly and that Cora is safe and thriving. Regina leaned forward, scanning the pages. I could almost see the numbers and risks fighting in her head. What exactly do you mean by wellness checks? She asked. A social worker would visit once a year to assess Cora's living situation, her education, and her overall well-being, I said. It's standard for large educational trusts involving minors. That seems rather invasive, Regina said carefully. It's designed to protect children from having their trust funds misused by guardians, I replied, watching her closely. Surely that wouldn't be a concern here. Derek looked up from the papers. Mom, this is amazing. But $500,000? How can you afford it? The business in Italy did very well, I said. I've decided I want to spend my money on family while I'm still here to see the impact. Regina went quiet for a long moment. $500,000 dangled in front of her, but she understood the oversight would open the door to questions she could never answer. There is another option, I added casually, as if it had just occurred to me. If the school and oversight requirements are too complicated, I could just pay you directly. A cash payment for the excellent care you've provided Cora over the years. Regina's head snapped up. Cash payment? Well, you've given up your career to provide full-time care for Cora, I said smoothly. That has real financial value. Her eyes lit up with pure greed. Here was the money, without the social workers. How much were you thinking? Derek asked, though I could see he was uneasy. I thought we could calculate it based on market rates, I said. Professional child care is about $30 an hour. If we estimate 10 hours of active supervision per day for the last 2 years, that comes to over $200,000 in child care services. Regina practically glowed. That's very thoughtful of you, to recognize the sacrifice I've made, she said. Of course, for tax purposes, I'd want to be very clear about what exactly the payment is for. The IRS needs proper documentation for large payments like this. I pulled a small recorder from my briefcase and set it, clearly visible, on the coffee table. Would you mind if I record this conversation? I asked pleasantly. My accountant will need an exact record of what I'm paying you for. She hesitated, but the promise of $200,000 won. Of course, she said. Wonderful. I pressed the button. Regina, can you describe the care you've provided for Cora over the past 2 years? She launched into what she thought was a self-flattering speech, but every sentence only exposed her more. I've provided structure and discipline, she began. I've taught her valuable life skills through household responsibilities. I've arranged educational opportunities with other families in our social circle. Educational opportunities? I prompted. Yes, Regina said. Cora has learned so much by spending time in other households. I've arranged for her to help those families with their domestic needs. It's been incredibly valuable for her social development. And these families pay you for Cora's time? I asked evenly. Well, naturally, she said. They contribute to her upkeep. It's expensive to feed and clothe a growing child. Derek frowned. Regina, what families? I thought you were homeschooling Cora here. She turned on him with irritation. Derek, there are many aspects of Cora's education that you leave to my judgment. You're always so busy with work. How often do these educational sessions happen? I asked. 3 to 4 times a week, she snapped. More, if there's high demand. High demand for Cora specifically? A predatory smile crossed her face. Cora has an excellent reputation. She's very obedient and thorough in her tasks. Derek shot to his feet. Regina, you're describing sending my daughter to work as a maid in strangers' houses. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. Everything I do is for Cora's benefit. She's learning responsibility and contributing to household expenses. Better than letting her sit around feeling sorry for herself. Contributing to household expenses? Derek's voice rose. She's 12. Regina's polished facade was gone now. You have no idea how hard it's been raising your daughter, she hissed. When I came into this family, she needed extensive behavior modification. The structure I've provided turned her from a spoiled, destructive child into a productive member of society. Productive, Derek repeated hollowly. You mean profitable. Don't you take that tone with me, Regina snarled. I've sacrificed my entire life to fix your broken daughter. The least she can do is contribute to her own upkeep instead of being a constant drain on our resources. The sweet stepmother act was gone. All that remained was the cold predator underneath. I let the recorder run as she continued. Cora should be grateful for what I've done for her, Regina ranted. Do you know how many children would love to have the structure and purpose I've given her? She was headed for juvenile detention or worse before I stepped in. By forcing her to scrub floors and work for free in your friends' houses? I asked quietly. By teaching her that the world doesn't owe her anything just because her mother died, Regina shot back. By showing her that comfort must be earned through hard work and obedience. Derek stared at her like he didn't know her at all. Regina, my God, what have you done? I've kept this family from financial collapse, she yelled. Do you think your salary alone keeps this lifestyle going? Money doesn't just appear. Cora's contributions have paid for every improvement in this house, every luxury. Contributions, I repeated. You mean the money other people pay you for access to my granddaughter? She's not your granddaughter anymore, Regina spat, rounding on me. You abandoned this family for 5 years. You don't get to walk in here and judge us now. I sent $10,000 every single month for her care, I said. And every penny went to her care, Regina shot back. Food, shelter, clothing, medical bills, education. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child properly? Then why does she sleep in a closet-sized room with no belongings, I asked, while you live like a queen? Because she hasn't earned anything better, Regina replied coldly. Everything in this house belongs to me and Derek. Cora gets exactly what she deserves based on her behavior and contribution. The recorder captured all of it, her worldview stripped bare. Then I asked the question that would lock everything in place. Regina, over the past 2 years, about how much money have you received from other families for Cora's educational services? She was so enraged she didn't stop to calculate. Between $15,000 and $20,000, she snapped. Money we desperately needed to keep this household running and provide for Cora's needs. The room went dead silent, except for the soft hum of the recorder. Derek collapsed back into his chair, his face chalk white. $20,000, he whispered. You've been selling my daughter's labor and keeping the money. I've been managing this family's finances in ways you clearly don't understand, Regina said. Someone had to make the hard decisions while you hid from reality. That's enough, I said. Derek, there's something else you need to know about your wife. I pulled out the newspaper clippings about Regina's past. Emma Walsh, the missing child. Thomas Brennan, the accidental death. The custody and abuse allegations. She's done this before, I said. To other children, in other families. She targets widowed fathers and vulnerable kids. This is a pattern. Derek read the articles with growing horror. Regina stood frozen, realizing how badly she'd underestimated me. You're lying, she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Emma Walsh is 24 now, living in Oregon, I said. She's been in therapy for years because of what you did to her. Jake Brennan is in a group home in Arizona because the trauma you caused was so severe no family would take him. Derek looked up, his face twisted with disgust and betrayal. You killed Thomas Brennan, he said quietly. That's ridiculous. He fell down the stairs, Regina snapped. After you'd been drugging him with sleeping pills, Derek said, just like you've probably been drugging me. The guilty flinch on her face was all the confirmation he needed. Derek stood slowly. Something fundamental shifted in his posture. The man who had been under Regina's control for years was gone. Get out, he said, his voice low. Derek, you're being manipulated. Get out! His voice exploded through the room. Get out of my house and away from my daughter, you sick, twisted monster. Regina's composure shattered. You'll regret this, Derek, she hissed. Without me, you'll lose everything. Cora will destroy you just like she destroyed Sarah. My wife died in a car accident, he said. Your wife died because she was distracted by that demanding little brat, Regina screamed. Cora killed her own mother, and she'll destroy you too if you don't keep control. The cruelty in those words hit Derek like a punch. I watched years of mental manipulation collapse in an instant, as he finally saw what Regina had been doing to both him and his daughter. You have 10 minutes to pack and leave, he said coldly. If you're still here after that, I'm calling the police. But I was already dialing. Detective Morrison, I said when she answered. It's time. Regina's face went white as she realized she had walked straight into a trap. Minutes later, patrol cars filled the driveway. Detective Morrison stepped into the house, listened to a short explanation, and then placed Regina under arrest for child exploitation and trafficking. As they led her out in handcuffs, she twisted around and screamed back at the house. You'll never be able to handle her. She's damaged goods. Nobody wants a broken child. But her words bounced off walls that no longer belonged to her, and off people who no longer believed her. The nightmare was finally over. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new home in Savannah, Georgia, watching Cora help me make Sunday dinner. She was still thin, but the bruises were gone, and her smile, her real smile, was finally returning. Real laughter had taken the place of that careful, silent obedience she used to live inside. Grandma Marcy, did I put enough oregano in the sauce? She asked, stirring the pot with exaggerated focus. Let me taste, I said, taking a spoonful. I closed my eyes and smiled. Perfect. You're becoming quite the chef. Cora lit up with genuine pride, the kind that comes from accomplishment, not terror of making a mistake. It had taken months to help her understand the difference. The legal process moved quickly once Detective Morrison had my recordings and Emma Walsh's statement. Regina was convicted of child trafficking, exploitation, and fraud. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 8. Her assets were seized to compensate her victims, though no amount of money could fully undo what she'd done to Emma, Jake, or Cora. Derek was shattered by the truth about his wife, but his horror at what had happened to his daughter pushed him to act. He voluntarily gave me temporary custody of Cora while he went into intensive therapy to understand how he'd been so completely manipulated. Our relationship was fragile, but he was working, really working, to rebuild trust with his daughter. She sends me letters, Cora told me one afternoon, meaning Regina. They still get delivered to Dad's house sometimes. What does she say? I asked. That she misses me, that she's sorry, that if I'd just visit her once, she could explain everything. Cora looked at me with eyes that were finally starting to see clearly. Dad tears them up now, she added quietly. He says she doesn't get to hurt me anymore. The healing process has been slow and messy. Cora came to my house with almost nothing, just the clothes she was wearing and a small box of keepsakes from her mother. Regina had hidden them away. Derek found them while clearing out the house. That first night, Cora had stood in the doorway of the bedroom I'd prepared. A soft bed, a desk, a cozy reading chair, a bookshelf full of age-appropriate books. Is this really mine? She asked. Every single thing in this room is yours, I told her, and you never have to earn it or keep it by being good. It's yours because you're my granddaughter, and I love you. She broke down then, deep, wrenching sobs that felt like years of grief and confusion finally spilling out. I held her while she cried for her mother, for the childhood she'd lost, for the safety she'd never had until that moment. The first weeks were the hardest. Every morning, Cora would wake up and immediately start looking for things to clean. What should I do today? She'd ask anxiously. What work do you need me to do? Sweetheart, I'd say, your only job is to be a child. Go to school, make friends, play, read, figure out what you enjoy. It's still a work in progress. Some nights she still wakes up from nightmares, convinced she has to earn every breath she takes. But more and more, when she looks at me, I see something new in her eyes. Not fear, not shame, hope. It took months for her to truly believe that love wasn't something you earned by working yourself to exhaustion. School was another mountain to climb. Cora was behind academically, but what worried me more was her social anxiety. She didn't know how to talk to other kids, how to joke, how to play. Being a child had never been an option for her. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a blessing. Cora is clearly very bright, she told me at our first parent-teacher meeting. She just needs time to learn that it's safe to be curious, to make mistakes, to ask questions. Slowly, achingly slowly, Cora began to emerge from the shell Regina had built around her. She discovered she loved fantasy novels, that she had a natural talent for drawing, and that underneath all that fear, she had a sharp, funny sense of humor when she felt safe enough to let it out. The money Regina stole from us was never fully recovered. I didn't care. I had saved enough from my years in business to make sure Cora and I would be comfortable. What mattered was that I had my granddaughter back. Derek came to visit every other weekend, working to rebuild something with his daughter that Regina had done her best to destroy. The visits were still awkward at times, but there was progress. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you," he told her during one of those early visits. "I should have seen what was happening. I should have listened when you tried to tell me." Regina was very good at making people believe her. Cora replied quietly, sounding far older than her 13 years. She fooled a lot of adults. Our therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, had been guiding Cora through the wreckage of what Regina left behind. She helped Cora understand that the abuse was never her fault, that she wasn't broken or damaged, and that she deserved love and safety as much as any other child. "Cora has remarkable resilience," Dr. Chen told me privately. "The fact that she held on to her core self, despite years of psychological manipulation, is extraordinary. She's going to be okay." That day, as we finished preparing dinner, I watched Cora set the table with the same careful attention to detail that had once been demanded of her. But now there was no fear, only quiet pride. She helped because she wanted to, not because she was afraid of punishment. "Grandma Marcy?" she asked as we sat down. "Yes, sweetheart? Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think my mom would be proud of who I'm becoming?" The question caught me by surprise, but the answer came easily. "Cora, your mother loved you more than anything in the world. She would be incredibly proud of your strength, your kindness, and your courage. But most of all, she'd be proud that you never gave up hope." Cora smiled, and for a moment, I saw Sarah's joy shining out through her daughter's face. After dinner, we slipped into our usual evening rhythm. Cora curled up on the couch with one of her beloved fantasy books while I worked on a crossword puzzle beside her. The quiet, easy companionship felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Grandma Marcy?" "Yes." "I'm glad you came home from Italy." "So am I, sweetheart," I said. "So am I." Later, as bedtime approached, Cora gathered her book and headed for her room, then paused in the hallway. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too, Cora," I replied, "more than you'll ever know." After she went to bed, I settled into my favorite chair and let my mind wander back over everything that had happened. A woman who once seemed so warm and devoted had nearly destroyed my granddaughter's spirit, but she'd made one fatal miscalculation. She had underestimated what real love and a determined grandmother could do. I thought about the money I'd sent over those 5 years, $10,000 every month, meant for Cora's care and education. In the end, those payments had bought something far more powerful than Regina's fancy clothes and renovated house. They gave me the reason to dig deeper when something felt wrong. They gave me the resources to fight back. They gave me the evidence I needed to expose the truth. Regina was now serving her sentence in a federal prison, where, with any luck, she would never again have the chance to get near vulnerable children. Emma Walsh had started a nonprofit to help other victims of family trafficking, turning her pain into something that could save others. Jake Brennan was in a specialized therapeutic foster home, slowly learning that not every adult was a threat, and Cora was becoming exactly who she was always meant to be: bright, curious, confident, and wonderfully herself. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Derek. "Hi, Mom. How's everything going?" "Good," I said. "Cora made the spaghetti sauce today. She's very proud of it." "That's great," he said, and I could hear the genuine warmth in his voice. "Mom, I wanted to tell you something." "What is it?" "I've been thinking about what you said months ago, that Regina targeted me because I was vulnerable and had assets. I've decided to donate the house." I blinked. "That's a big decision." "I can't live there anymore," he said quietly. "Every room reminds me of what I let happen to my daughter. I'm donating it to a foundation that helps children who've been trafficked or exploited. At least something good can come out of that place." "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said softly. And Mom, thank you. For not giving up on Cora, for fighting for her when I was too blind to see what was happening. She's my granddaughter, Derek, I said. I would have moved heaven and earth to protect her. After we hung up, I walked quietly down the hallway to check on Cora. She was fast asleep, her book still open beside her, her breathing slow and peaceful. This was how a child was supposed to sleep, safe, secure, without fear of what tomorrow might bring. I tucked the blanket around her shoulders and kissed her forehead gently. Sweet dreams, my darling girl, I whispered. You're safe now, you're home. As I turned off the light and gently closed her door, it hit me that this wasn't just about rescuing Cora from Regina. It was about taking back what family truly means. Not control, not fear, not manipulation dressed up as care. Real family is love, protection. A place where a child can make mistakes, feel safe, and grow into exactly who they were meant to be. What Regina stole from Cora wasn't only money. She tried to steal her childhood, her self-worth, her ability to trust. But those things, with time and patience, can be rebuilt, and love is the strongest foundation you can build on. Standing in that quiet hallway, listening to the peaceful breathing of a child who no longer fell asleep afraid, I realized we had gained something far more precious than any inheritance. We had our family back. The war was over, and love had won. Now I want to turn to you, the one who stayed with me until the end of this story. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something even remotely similar in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and your stories matter. And if this story touched your heart, stay with the channel a little longer. On the final screen, I've left you 2 more of our most powerful stories. Click on either one. They'll surprise you. Thank you for watching all the way to the end.